Europe builds and it builds well.
We have the founders and the stories to prove it.
I'm Mathilda Nathan, founder of Born.
And I'm Niko, Efstathiou, journalist and author.
And together, we'll be co-hosting some of Europe's greatest founders.
Join us as we unfold their stories with candor and detail.
So we're very excited to have here with us today someone who wears multiple hats for a change in Europe Builds, explore sort of multiple questions. Things like how do we quantify and measure culture in enterprises? What are the challenges of being a serial founder, a second-time founder? And what is the importance of having communities and networks to support personal growth for founders and entrepreneurs? So it's our huge pleasure to have with us Andreas Konstantinou, founder and CEO of Rethink Culture, who is on a mission to help 1 million businesses create healthier and more fulfilling cultures. Previously, Andreas had founded and led Data and grew it into one of the leading developer analyst firms, helping the likes of Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Facebook understand developers through data. He's a podcaster, he's an educator, he's omnipresent and quite active. So we're really happy to explore a couple of issues with him today. Andreas, welcome to Europe Builds.
Thank you, Niko. Thank you, Mathilda. It's my pleasure. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation here.
Same.
Awesome. So we usually start by giving our speakers the chance to give us an elevator pitch. You've done a lot of things, so it might be quite difficult to pack them in the 3-minute mark. But let's try to see how you would sort of package who you are and what you have built. If, say, we were in an elevator and we met and you had just a couple of minutes to introduce yourself.
So I will say that my life revolves around a few projects. So I'll start with the unusual ones. Firstly, my kids. I have 2 teenage sons, 13 and 14. My partner and wife, Kat. On the professional side, I am regional chair for Europe in the Entrepreneurs Organization, which is an organization of about 20,000 entrepreneurs globally. We're 2,000 members in Europe. And our goal is to develop professionally and personally through peer coaching, learning, and lots of other activities. I'm also founder and chairman of the board of Data. It's how I started my entrepreneurial journey. I'll tell you more about that. I was completely naive, not knowing what I was getting into. Now I've transitioned out of the CEO shoes 3 years ago. I'm in a board leadership type of role. I'm learning a lot from the transition and the years that followed that. And the last 2 years, I've started something out of personal passion and drive to make sizable contribution to the world, sizable, with all the humility that comes with that. So making a tiny dent in my universe, which is to help thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands of companies, because like Bob Chapman of Barry Waymiller says, business has the potential to be the greatest force for good, and we have the potential to really inspire and let those people bring their best selves, shine, and return home with a smile and bring that smile and light back into their families, into their children, into their communities.
Amazing. That's actually a quite unusual elevator pitch from what we've heard so far. And you're definitely the first one that starts with family first, which I think partly answers my second question, but I'm still going to say that it's quite unusual to see a founder not solely obsessed about one thing, one idea. Okay, so you've been founder of a couple of startups, but you've also been kind of teaching at the university. You've also have been very active in the EO sphere. Can you tell me more about kind of this?
So I would call it integrative thinking. So there's a few ways to look at integrative thinking. We talk about work-life balance, but the new way of talking about that is work-life integration. So how can we blend, not necessarily do everything together, but combine in harmonious ways work and life? Integrative thinking also applies when we have to deal with conflicts. So how can I work with a colleague that I don't agree with their views, but I appreciate their contribution. That's also integrative thinking. It's the opposite of cognitive dissonance in a sense, but it applies to all aspects of life. I'm over generalizing and philosophizing in a sense, which I love doing. So forgive me if you're not of that cohort, but I find great value in connecting the dots.
I really like that. And I want to get kind of deeper into this integrating thinking brain of yours. And I would love for you to walk me through one of the biggest decisions you make, either professionally, like either at the O or think culture / data, wherever you want. And I want to understand kind of what were your criteria? How were you thinking about how I'm going to make the right decision?
So I was reading a book yesterday about purpose from Elizabeth Dixon, and she says purpose is the filter through which we view our decisions. So a few years ago, about 8 years ago, I went to this conference, which was an inflection point in my life. It was after my divorce. That conference helped me set my 10-year goals. And my purpose, as well as a long list of, what I want to accomplish, experiences I want to have, ways I want to serve others, and so on. And so that purpose and these goals are the filter by which I view my decisions. So I don't feel I need to explain a single decision, but all the big decisions in my life I view through that lens. Maybe I'll give you an example because examples always help add a little more color to the story. So
Definitely.
one of my, actually my purpose in life is to be a multiplier for multipliers. So multiplier is someone who helps others increase the potential of themselves that they're tapping into. If I'm working under a diminisher manager, in Liz Wiseman's words, I would not deliver my full potential. I would work at 40% of my potential. If I live under a manager that allows me to really shine, be myself, voice my opinion, have a healthy conflict conversation with others, and so on, I will deliver so much more to my environment, to my colleagues, to my work. Right. So I really believe in this multiplication effect. So my purpose is to be a multiplier to multipliers. And multipliers are those who serve or who influence a lot of other people. So teachers, parents, entrepreneurs, among others. So when I set that purpose, one of my goals, long-term goals, was to set up, help other entrepreneurs. And that was early on. That was about 7 years ago. And another member of EO Greece, back then Dimitris Memos, suggested that I start a local accelerator in EO, in Entrepreneurs Organization, which was a big undertaking, start another essentially training school for entrepreneurs. Lots of work. And I said, am I willing to commit that? But then I thought, okay, in my goals, I have this line that says, help other entrepreneurs, support them. And actually, I had built an accelerator because that's the only way I knew back then of helping entrepreneurs at some scale. And so I said, yeah, it makes sense because that rhymes or resonates with my goal. So purpose is the filter through which we make our decisions. That's my takeaway.
I like that. I'm keeping that.
I'm keeping that as a mantra as well. So let's shift a little bit now into rethink culture, where you have a very resonating purpose, right? You want to make workplace culture something that's measurable and something that's embedded in different companies. The two questions here is, how do you define something as a healthy workplace culture? It's something, you sort of know it when you see it, right? But what are sort of the defining pillars of it?
Yeah.
And the second aspect of this question is, why now? And do you think that the whole pandemic, post-pandemic culture-based conversation played a role in timing as well?
Great questions, Niko. So for me, culture is everything that we can sit in a corner in an office and observe. Imagine holding a camera or having a notepad and taking notes. How we make decisions, how we share information, how we collaborate, how we avoid conflicts, how we build or not build a relationship with our colleagues and manager, how we are inspired by what the company is doing, how we are comfortable where we are and we can do our best work because we have a nice corner office with lots of light, or we have constant distractions, how we are aligning with our colleagues, having the same goals, being able to collaborate, share information, give feedback in a candid way to each other, without without fear and without with psychological safety. So all of that is culture. It's all the behaviors we can observe in the environment around us. Now, my personal goal is really what I mentioned, and it's not a goal, it's an ambition, because 1 million businesses building better cultures is approximately 1/300 of all businesses which exist today. So it's a very, very ambitious goal, but it's an ambition. But I'm really, really moved by the toxicity I see, which is unintentional, 100% unintentional, and naive in most businesses, and also the joy of people when they live in a positive culture. I mean, you can actually observe that in very specific circumstances. I used to be a micromanager unintentionally. I hadn't realized back then, but through a lot of work, including divorce psychotherapy, joining EO, reading a lot of psychology books, working with myself, a lot of little things that helped me realize my old ways weren't the ways I wanted to be. It was not my authentic self. I would risk saying that vast majority of the entrepreneurs, like vast majority of people, haven't worked with themselves in doing structured self-awareness and understanding who they are. In Greek, we say know thyself, right? So very few people have actually worked on that. As a result, most of us as leaders do not know what we don't know. We have tons of blind spots others see in us. And so when I say I'm a little crazy, I mean that most people who are in a leadership position will not realize that culture is what is holding them back. And in their performance, in hiring the best people, in retaining the best people, in really surviving a merger, in finishing successfully a major change project. And they won't see it because culture reflects leadership. And what that means is it all starts with a leader, which is usually the CEO. So if the leader is not self-aware, they will not realize that the culture they've built, which is by default, it's not by design. It's happened because of their ways, because of their leadership style, because of the way they treat people and they manage people, is not the one that will help people bring their best selves to work. And so, whereas for me, culture is important. And sorry, I'm making a long, maybe a long answer to a short question. Culture is important to me, but I think the way you can experience it in business is when you have an unhealthy culture. You won't get, and to answer your question, Niko, Gen X, Gen Y, millennials, they will research your company on Glassdoor before joining. They will ask around. They're not just coming there for salary. These are the past days of industrial, the industrial days where people are
Yeah.
just in it for the job, for the money. So they will research your company. You won't hire the right people. You won't be able to hire the right people. You'll be a victim of the war for talent, expecting people to come and work for you when you don't provide the conditions for them. People will leave from your company. And if you want to execute a major change project, salary band changes, new divisions, all of that, you will not understand the root causes of failure unless you understand culture.
Can I intersect a bit here? I've experienced culture in many different startups and scale ups. I've always felt there's an unspoken culture as well as an articulated culture. So sometimes in some companies, these two align, in some companies, they don't. And I've always felt that it's more of an art rather than a science itself. Now, your first product, the cultural health score, is trying to kind of bring in the surface and create metrics and make it a lot more actionable and tangible for people to be able to act and bridge the gap of these two levels of cultures that could exist in an organization. Can you talk to me a bit about how companies have perceived this product? What are the type of companies you're going for? And I would love some kind of key traction metrics if you could share with us.
Yeah. So what the culture health score does is turns culture or organizational health, I would extend, from an art to a science. And the way it does that is by saying, look, what is a healthy culture? What is a healthy organization? It's one where people's needs are met. Because if people's needs are not met, you'll have all sorts of problems that you have to deal with. So it's using a scientifically backed framework inspired by Maslow's pyramid and encompassing a lot of other research into creating a pyramid of 21 human needs, from fair compensation to purpose and personal growth. All of these needs are measured using what for me is the unit of culture, which is behavior. Because if you ask people what they think about culture, which is what most engagement surveys do, those people will tell you what you want to hear. If you ask them, do you have a trust relationship with your manager? Yes, of course I have. Do you wake up with a smile at work? Of course. Do you trust the leadership that is going in the right direction? Of course, because I don't know if I'm being watched, if people are seeing who am I and what am I responding. And so I will most likely tell you what you want to hear. And if you ask seasoned HR managers, they'll tell you, yeah, we run a lot of these engagement surveys, but at the end of the day, we don't know what we can trust. So the reason we measure behaviors is because you can't ask people their attitudes and expect them to tell you anything other than what you want to hear. And so we measure behavior. So we ask employees to be the observers of culture. Things like, does my manager know about the things and people that are important in my life? Does the company make a positive impact to society? Are we open to sharing our weaknesses and our mistakes with our colleagues and so on? These are behaviors. Now, you asked about traction and about customers. So the customers are primarily CEOs. They are not HR executives. The reason is that every single HR executive will care about culture, but they're not responsible for culture. The primary way they're measured is how effectively they can recruit and keep people problems away from management. This is the primary informal way HR executives are measured. They're not measured about long-term culture, they're measured with short-term results. So the product is designed for CEOs, and it's also designed for another very interesting audience, which is learning and development and consulting companies. So you have 1 million coaches out there, you have tens of thousands learning and development companies, and every company needs learning and development and workshops and change management, facilitation and so on. But how do you know it was effective? You bring someone in. And so what we do is we help them measure before and after the intervention and show and prove the positive ROI by the change in human needs and how they're being met. Traction, we're still at the beginning. We've measured 30 companies so far. I'm going to be raising a round next year to build up momentum and traction. And so far, we've proven the product. The testimonials are incredible. Like, I wish I had testimonials like this in my other company. The value is like immediate. Even if you look at a 20 people company or a 200 people company, it's not just that the UI, is beautiful and all of that, but the clarity you get by understanding behaviors and how they're different and human needs as a lens to interpret those behaviors is super clear.
And you're targeting kind of both size organizations, kind of the SMEs one and the very big ones?
For me, the sweet spot is 30 to 300 employees.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
more than 300, you get into this denial of we're using engagement surveys, right? And we are running surveys. But as you know, the questions you ask will give you the answers. So the way in Greek we say the way you set your bed is the way you're going to wake up, right? So if you ask their own questions, you get their own answers.
Yep.
Mm,
But that's engagement surveys are there to stay, and they're measuring a different thing. They're measuring engagement, but they're not measuring how to improve your engagement. They're not measuring how to improve your culture. Culture is what drives engagement. That's not the other way around.
And can I ask something around the clientele, Steve? So you're targeting Europe and the US?
The only region that I'm not targeting at the moment is East. So uh,
Hmm.
primarily China, Japan, and so on, because the cultural attributes in those countries are different. The reason this is so universal as an approach and methodology is because it uses human needs, which are largely invariant. For example, with a company that we measured recently that had offices in Romania, Cyprus, and Greece, their culture was equally balanced, equally good in all of these countries. However, you would see national culture differences in the way people deal with conflict or deal with information sharing.
And have you seen, since you explored both the EU and the US market, have you seen differences in these two cultures? Like, sure, there's a lot that unites us, and this interest in behavioral science, it gives you universal answers. But have you seen different challenges in the two regions, different
I'll
approaches?
be I'll be very honest. I don't have a large enough sample to draw conclusions. So far, I have not seen national trends. I have seen the biggest effect on culture is the leadership.
Culture starts with the leader, it doesn't start with HR. So when we're talking about startups, culture sort of starts with the founder, right? And the
Correct.
founder has a lot on their mind while they're building their thing. But it's clear from all that you're saying that it's really important from design point to sort of integrate culture into their process. So what's the sort of advice that you would give to entrepreneurs that are starting to build up their businesses to also start building a strong and supportive team culture from the ground up that will keep evolving and scaling as their company scale?
So, firstly, there is countless studies. One recent study said that 7 out of 10 candidates rejected job offers because of a bad culture fit, and 1 in 2 voluntary departures is because of a bad culture fit. Colloquially, we might say you join a company because you're impressed by the outward credentials, like big company accomplishments, big clients, growth potential, money, all of that, but you stay because of the manager. And like Gallup says, the manager is really the ambassador of culture. So culture is what keeps or doesn't keep an employee.
I am actually very curious because we've had many founders on the show already, but you're the first one who's actually already done the second kind of entrepreneurial
Yeah.
uh, journey. Like they crossed that from first to second um, uh, time founder boundary, I would say. So about 3 years ago, you really transitioned from slash data and you handed over to another CEO. Can you tell me how easy or difficult was making that decision and kind of losing control of your first baby, I would say?
So making the decision was easy to make the transition because I knew that I wasn't using my full potential um, as a CEO. I was mainly a multiplier for others. I was not really guiding product or marketing or sales or anything else. And I was hungry to get back into making things, with my own hands, as opposed to helping others make things. That was the easy decision of leaving. Now, the hard bit, as you say, Matilda, was letting go of control. I had a need of control. And the need for control is something that is very native to how we think, and it takes a lot of conscious effort to unlearn to need control. It's okay to appreciate control, but to need it is addictive. And so our people and culture person, Sarah, asked me a year before the handover, what bits are you going to retain control of, and what bits is the CEO going to retake control of? And we initially thought, oh yeah, I want to keep control of this and this and this and that, and the culture, and like the roadmap, blah blah blah. And I spoke to a serial entrepreneur friend, Jens from Germany, and who's done it multiple times, and says, "Do you trust the CEO?" I said, "Yeah, I trust her." Okay, then let her do her own thing. And so I kept a very hands-off approach, which is letting her manage the business and us agreeing our financial targets. And only if things are off the financial targets, I will be more involved. But psychologically, it was very hard letting go of control. Absolutely.
Just out of curiosity, the CEO has kind of lived and breathed data for a long time before you appointed her
I
as
think
a
she was there
CEO.
3 years already.
Okay, that's probably kind of a smoother transition than kind of bringing someone from the
Yeah,
outside.
there is pros and cons. I can't tell you what it would be like bringing someone in. I was very clear on who I didn't want to be a CEO. I was very clear on who I wanted to be a CEO, but I didn't do an outside search at the time.
So, sort of in the spirits of the podcast so far, which is bringing a lot of behavioral science and purpose into the discussion of entrepreneurship, something I've heard second time founders talk about is how they need some time to escape being defined by their first venture as they're stepping into their second one. And this is sort of both an internal process, so them stop defining themselves with the way they used to run things or do things in their first venture, try more experimental things and approaches, but also the way the world perceives them, that sometimes you're really defined by the first thing you did. So it's hard to sort of reinvent the wheel on the second venture.
Yeah.
Did you experience either? And what are some ways to sort of deal with it?
I didn't experience the identity dependency. I didn't see myself tied to that. I experienced what a lot of people who exit their business experience, which is the violence. It's a violent immersion into silence, which sounds counterintuitive. I also experienced it very recently in a 5-day silent meditation retreat. So when you're used all day to be fully hands-on, heads in, lean in, all of those things, solving problems all day, thinking about problems when you come back home, and suddenly there's nothing for you to do, no one calling you, no one asking for your opinion, no problems to work on. It's a violent immersion into silence. And that is a withdrawal syndrome that I think every entrepreneur who has been through an exit has experienced.
I like that. And can I just ask what you're doing differently in the second venture?
So, firstly, I thought I was seriously impressed by myself. I positively surprised that I had a lot of lessons to lean onto. For example, I started by building zero, no external help, no freelancers, no development team. Initially, it was all an Excel sheet, the Google Sheet to be exact. So, very little investment in product and almost 100% investment in learning from customers. And this is what I did totally differently to my first experience. It would be a much smoother ride than it was. What worked extremely well was the product market fit in these first 2 years. But what I didn't devote enough time on is the customer acquisition cost, because I focused almost exclusively on learning from customers and building the product based on what I learned.
And you're still a one-person team?
If you exclude the freelancers, yes. If you include the freelancers, no.
No. I think I'm more curious about the following and sort of closing question more than any other episode of Europe Builds because of your approach so far. It's been very multidisciplinary. So I'm curious, what if you could single out one single important trait that you believe a founder should possess, which one would you choose, and why is that?
So I was telling Mathilda earlier about this podcast I listened to today, which summed it up really nicely for me. And I was gonna lead answering your question with self-awareness and self-knowledge, knowing thyself. Um, and that is about knowing as an entrepreneur what things you're good at, what give you energy, and what don't. So, for example, I'm very conscious on, as I plan my next year and my next 3 years, what things I don't want to be doing. I don't want to be doing sales, finance, and a few other things. And I'm very conscious about finding others to do those things because I don't want to burn myself. I want to enjoy the journey. So knowing myself is crucial in knowing what things I don't want to be doing and being very intentional about not doing those things. There's two other things which I will communicate, even if you ask for just one, which is actually three. One is equanimity, which is very close to resilience, but equanimity is a very special word in English that is not readily translatable, which means dealing with challenges with a kind of serenity or stoicism. The third one is adaptability, being like a boxer who is on her toes all the time as she punches and swerves and so on. She has to constantly adapt. And the fourth one is being vulnerable, because it's very lonely at the top. The more people you lead, the more people you have responsibility for, the higher the expectation, the higher the pressure on you to look polished and successful and know it all. And vulnerability is a gift both to yourself, because you take that pressure off. You learn to be stronger by being more authentic. And it's a gift to the people that look up to you, because that also takes the fear of working with you and turns it into love. And to wrap it up, I would say that all of these four characteristics, so knowing thyself, equanimity, adaptability or agility, and vulnerability, are really represented nicely by the element of water.
Hmm.
And if you
I
think
like that.
about it, it really reflects, it's clear like vulnerability, it's agile, finds an obstacle, just goes around it. It will always persist calmly, and it's lucid, so it knows itself.
I love this analogy. Like, I have it
Yeah.
as a visual now in my
Yeah,
mind.
beautifully packaged. And no surprise it resonates with three Greeks, right? We love water and we see a lot of symbolism in water. But yeah, Andreas, Konstantinou, thank you so much. It was a very multifaceted conversation, from culture to being a multiplier of multipliers, to bringing these behavioral science insights into seeing the workplace in a better, healthier way, achieving better results along the process. And also something quite interesting for us, I think the first time we had this second founder conversation, and you went really deep but with a lot of candor and honesty. So thank you so much for your insights throughout the talk.
Likewise.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Europe Builds, where we show that the European ecosystem is no longer an underdog story.
If you like our episode and want to hear more, follow Europe Builds on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Born's YouTube channel.